Ma'am, who are you and what are you doing in this house?
This is my home. What seems to be the problem?
We got reports of suspicious activity. I need your ID.
On what legal basis?
Just cooperate. Ma'am.
Pause right there because that exchange tells you everything. Two officers on a porch, a woman in a robe holding coffee, and the very first assumption is you don't belong here. If you like these deep dive stories where accountability actually lands, subscribe. And I want your opinion in the comments. If an officer shows up at your door demanding ID just because, do you comply immediately? Or do you ask for the legal basis like she did? Now, here's what the clip doesn't tell you yet. The woman they're confronting is Judge Patricia Williams, and that Tuesday morning was about to detonate an entire police department. It's 7:23 a.m. in an upscale neighborhood. Manicured lawns, tidy hedges, the kind of place where nothing is supposed to happen. Judge Williams is 52, a federal judge for the last decade, appointed at the highest level, respected by prosecutors and defense attorneys alike. Before the bench, she spent 8 years as a district attorney. The kind of resume that doesn't just open doors, it closes arguments. But none of that matters when you answer your own front door in a silk robe with your coffee still steaming. She'd just come back from her morning jog. Same route, same quiet streets, same routine. She's reviewing files for an afternoon sentencing hearing when she hears heavy footsteps outside. Then the knocking hits, aggressive, impatient, like someone isn't asking to enter. They're announcing they already own the moment. She opens the door expecting a neighbor or maybe a delivery. Instead, there are two uniformed officers, Daniel Reeves and Marcus Thompson, hands resting on their belts in that posture that says, "This is already a problem, and you're already the problem." Reeves doesn't introduce himself properly. He doesn't lead with the reason he's there. He leads with a challenge. "Who are you, and what are you doing in this house?" Judge Williams blinks, confused but calm. "This is my, home. What seems to be the problem?" Reeves says they got a report of suspicious activity and demands ID. And this is where her experience shows. She doesn't yell. She doesn't argue in circles. She asks one clean question that forces the situation into the light. On what legal basis? Because that's the whole game. A lot of these encounters rely on one thing: the person being questioned folding fast enough that nobody ever has to justify the suspicion. Reeves doesn't answer the question. He gives the oldest command in the book, just cooperate. But the truth, what later comes out, is there was no call, no suspicious person report, nothing in dispatch. What actually happened was simpler and uglier. Officer Reeves had been patrolling the neighborhood when he saw a black woman in athletic wear returning from a jog, comfortable, unbothered, clearly belonging. And something about that picture didn't compute for him. So he created a story, radioed Thompson, and manufactured his own reasonable suspicion. Here's the key moment. Judge Williams could have ended this instantly by saying, "I'm a federal judge." But she doesn't. She decides to see how they treat a person they assume has no power. So she keeps her voice even. What specific suspicious activity was reported? The officers can't answer because there's nothing to answer. Reeves stumbles into vague language. Someone doesn't belong. Thompson adds they need to verify she has the right to be there. Judge Williams asks if they have a warrant, if they have legal authority to demand entry or identification at her front door. Reeves gets visibly irritated. He tells her her attitude is suspicious. Thompson warns her about obstruction, and that right there is the pressure tactic. Make rights sound like guilt. Make questions sound like resistance. Turn a calm citizen into a problem because they won't surrender control. Judge Williams stays calm. "I'm exercising my constitutional rights in my own home." And then Reeves makes the kind of decision that ends careers. He pushes past her and steps into the house without permission, claiming he needs to check for other occupants. Thompson follows him in. No consent, no warrant, no emergency, just two officers walking into a private residence because they feel entitled to. Judge Williams doesn't fight them physically. She doesn't give them a reason to escalate. But she states clearly out loud that they are inside without consent. Then she pulls out her phone and starts recording. The moment that camera comes up, Reeves snaps. He demands she stop recording. She refuses. Because in public-facing official conduct, recording is lawful, and she knows it. So Reeves reaches for her phone. What he doesn't know is the house is already recording everything. 6 months earlier, Judge Williams installed a high-end security system, multiple angles, high-definition video, crystal-clear audio, automatic cloud backup, the kind of system that doesn't accidentally fail at the convenient moment. So when Reeves snatches her phone and throws it, when Thompson starts rifling through personal belongings, when they demand she prove she lives there while standing in her living room, every second is captured. And then it gets worse. Judge Williams asks for badge numbers. She asks for a supervisor. Reeves loses control completely. The footage later shows him using racial slurs and demeaning language, accusing her of criminal activity, implying she couldn't afford the home legitimately, telling her people like her don't belong in neighborhoods like this. Thompson doesn't stop him. He joins in. For nearly 20 minutes, Judge Williams stands there and documents it all, composed in a way that almost makes it more chilling, because you realize she's not just protecting herself. She's building a record. Eventually, the officers find nothing, because there was nothing. They start to leave, but Reeves can't help himself. He throws a final threat. If he sees her in the neighborhood again, she'll be arrested for trespassing. He says he'll contact the homeowner about the suspicious woman breaking in. And that's when Judge Williams ends the experiment. She walks to her home office, returns with her judicial credentials, and places them on the coffee table. The change on their faces is instant. Reeves goes pale. Thompson starts backing toward the door like his body is trying to undo the last 20 minutes. Judge Williams keeps her tone measured. Everything you did was recorded. You entered without consent. You violated my rights. And I will be filing complaints with every relevant authority today. They leave fast, almost running, and in that moment I want to ask you something. Do you think they would have stopped on their own if she hadn't revealed who she was? Put your answer in the comments, because that question is the heart of why this story matters. Within 30 minutes, Judge Williams is on the phone with the FBI, specifically the Civil Rights Division. The response is immediate. A veteran agent arrives with a technical specialist and a civil rights prosecutor. They sit for hours reviewing the footage, documenting every violation, collecting statements. Meanwhile, Reeves and Thompson go back to their precinct in panic. Only now do they look her up and realize the worst detail. She's not just a federal judge. She's a senior figure in her district, someone who's ruled on constitutional violations and sentenced corrupt officers. Translation: they didn't just abuse a citizen. They did it to someone who speaks fluent federal law. By Thursday, the story breaks nationally. Footage is released. It goes viral. Public reaction is immediate. The chief holds an emergency press conference, suspends both officers without pay, promises cooperation. But this case doesn't stop at 2 officers. Because when federal investigators dig, they don't just review this morning. They review patterns, stops, complaints, internal communications, training culture, arrest data. And what they uncover is the part departments fear the most. It wasn't isolated. Black residents in affluent neighborhoods were being stopped and questioned at drastically higher rates than white residents. Complaints piled up against Reeves and Thompson, dozens, mostly dismissed. reduced to verbal warnings, treated like background noise. So a grand jury is convened quickly. Evidence is straightforward. Unlawful entry, illegal search, civil rights violations under color of law, and additional charges tied to threats and misconduct, captured on video. Both officers are indicted, and because the evidence is clean, time-stamped, high resolution, with audio, the case doesn't become a debate. It becomes a demonstration. The trial moves fast. The jury sees the footage. They hear the language. They see the lack of legal basis. They hear how the suspicious activity report never existed. Guilty verdicts land hard. And sentencing follows. Serious time. Serious consequences. Then the civil side hits. Judge Williams files a major federal civil rights lawsuit. But she's not the only one. After the story goes public, people come forward. Doctors, professors, business owners, describing the same pattern from these same officers. Many had complained before. Nothing happened. Now they have a blueprint for being heard. A hotline is set up. Reports flood in. The city does what cities do when the numbers start growing. It calculates risk. And eventually a settlement follows. Massive payout, public reforms, and a federal consent decree that forces the department under oversight for years. Mandatory cameras, revamped complaint systems, civilian review authority with real power. Bias training that's audited instead of performed for optics. That's the part people miss. The money isn't the real punishment. The real punishment is oversight. It's losing the ability to quietly bury patterns and call them isolated. Judge Williams goes back to her courtroom, but she doesn't pretend the experience didn't happen. She speaks publicly about it, not because she needs attention, but because she knows the most dangerous sentence in civil rights history is, no one important was harmed. Because if this can happen to a federal judge in her own home, imagine what happens to people without credentials, without cameras, without leverage. And that's the lasting impact of this case. Not just 2 careers destroyed, but a message carved into the record. Evidence matters. Rights matter. And when misconduct meets documentation, accountability can actually arrive. If you made it this far, subscribe for more stories like this. And drop your opinion below. Should officers with repeated profiling complaints be removed from street duty automatically? Or do you believe departments should handle it internally until something big happens?